a man's hands, torn open, pinned to rough timber with iron spikes the width of a finger. Darkness at noon, the sun has quit. The earth splits beneath the hill like a wound opening in sympathy. You think you know this story. You have seen the paintings, the movies, the stained glass. But what if I told you the man on that cross was not a victim? He was an operator executing a plan so precise that 23 prophecies written across 15 centuries converged on a single afternoon. This was not a tragedy. This was a rescue operation, the most deliberately planned extraction in cosmic history, and the man on that cross knew every detail before the first nail was forged. In the next 40 minutes, you will see those 23 prophecies written centuries apart converge on a single 6-hour window, and you will understand why the most powerful empire on earth, the most sophisticated religious system in history, and the forces of hell itself could not stop what was coming. By the end of this video, you will never read the Passion narrative the same way again. And if this channel is new to you, that subscribe button is the only way to make sure you see what comes next. Rewind. 6 days before Passover, a village called Bethany, 2 miles east of Jerusalem. A tomb cut into limestone. A man named Lazarus has been dead 4 days. His sister Martha stands at the entrance, her face wrecked with grief. And she says the most human thing anyone has ever said to God: "Lord, by this time there is a stench. He has been dead 4 days." She is not being faithless. She is being honest. The body has turned. The gases have built. Decay has won. The stone rolls away. The smell hits the crowd like a wall. Myrrh and aloe poured over 4 days of decomposition, sweet spice losing the war against death. And Jesus does not pray. He does not ask. He issues a command. A military order aimed at death itself. "Lazarus, come forth." And from the blackness of that tomb, something moves. A figure wrapped head to foot in grave linens stumbles toward the light. Strips of burial cloth unraveling from his arms. His eyes blinking, adjusting, alive. Finding the Judean sun for the first time in 4 days. That tomb had a stone door. It was rolled away to let life out. Remember that door. You will see it again. Locked in fear, sealed by an empire, and finally opened not to let someone out, but to let witnesses in. 500 years before this moment, the prophet Daniel wrote that the Anointed One would be cut off, and gave the exact number of weeks from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem to the day this man would ride into the city. The countdown was nearly finished. Word travels fast. Within hours, the Sanhedrin calls an emergency session. 71 men in a semicircle of stone seats, lamplight catching the gold thread in their robes. They are not debating theology, they are doing political math. If Jesus keeps raising the dead, the crowds will crown him king. If the crowds crown him king, Rome will send the legions. And if Rome sends the legions, every man in this room loses everything. Then Caiaphas, the high priest, stands and delivers the verdict with devastating simplicity. You know nothing at all. It is better that one man die for the people than that the whole nation perish. And John, who was there, adds an editorial note that should stop you cold. He says Caiaphas did not say this on his own. He prophesied. The high priest of Israel accidentally spoke the thesis of the entire gospel. One man dying so a nation could live. He meant it as politics. God meant it as theology. The man who ordered the execution announced the rescue, and never knew it. Here is what most people miss. Jesus knew. He knew that raising Lazarus was signing his own death warrant. The text in John 11, verse 6 is explicit. When he heard Lazarus was sick, he deliberately stayed where he was for 2 more days. He waited until Lazarus was dead. He chose to save his friend knowing it would trigger his own execution. This was not a man caught in events beyond his control. This was a commander initiating the final phase of an operation planned before the foundation of the world. 5 days later, the road into Jerusalem, a donkey, not a war horse, chosen deliberately. 500 years earlier, the prophet Zechariah had written, "Rejoice greatly, daughter of Zion. Your king comes to you gentle and riding on a donkey." The crowds do not need the reference. They feel it. Palm branches slap against limestone streets, hundreds of cloaks thrown on the dusty road, the distant bleating of thousands of Passover lambs being herded toward the temple. And the crowd erupts with the words of Psalm 118, the Hallel Psalm, the Passover Psalm, "Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." The Pharisees are watching from the walls. John 12, verse 19, records their panic in a single sentence. "See, the whole world has gone after him." They meant it as frustration. They did not know they were writing prophecy. You have watched someone walk into something they knew would cost them everything, and you called it foolish. A marriage that would drain them, a ministry that would break them, a conversation that would end a friendship. But what if the cost was the point? What if the price was the rescue? Then Jesus stops the procession. The shouting fades. He looks over the city. The white marble of the temple blazing in the sun, the smoke of sacrifices rising, the streets packed with pilgrims, and he weeps, not silently. Luke uses a word that means he wailed. "If you had known, even you, the things that make for your peace. But now they are hidden from your eyes. Days will come when your enemies will build siege ramps around you, encircle you, hem you in on every side. They will dash you to the ground, you and your children within you, and they will not leave one stone upon another." 40 years later, in 70 Anno Domini, the Roman general Titus did exactly this. 1 million dead. The temple burned to bedrock. The historian Josephus was there. He watched it happen. If you open Google Maps right now and search the Western Wall in Jerusalem, you are looking at the last remaining foundation stones of the temple Jesus wept over. The retaining wall survived. The temple did not. The stones remember what the city forgot. You have been told Judas betrayed Jesus for greed. That is the Sunday school version. The real story is worse. But first, the moment that broke him. Jesus enters the court of the Gentiles. The sound hits first. Thousands of animals bellowing and bleating. The metallic clink of coins. Money changers shouting exchange rates in Aramaic and Greek. This was not a house of prayer. It was a financial district. The largest open-air market in Judea, operating under sacred license. The smell of animal dung and incense mixing in the colonnades. And Jesus braids a whip of cords. Slowly, deliberately. Everyone can see what he is making. No one moves to stop him. He overturns the first table. Coins scatter across stone. Tyrian shekels ringing, spinning, rolling into the cracks between paving stones. He flips another and another. Doves explode from splintered cages in a white eruption of wings. Cattle bolt, sheep scatter. My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers. The Greek word Mark uses is not overturned in a passive sense. It is katestrepson, the same root as catastrophe. Jesus catastrophed the tables. The text is precise about this. This was not religious rage. This was surgical. Notice what he attacked. Not the theology, not the sacrificial system, not the priesthood. He attacked the money, because the temple had become the economic engine that kept the priesthood compliant with Rome. The Sadducees ran the money-changing operation. Annas, the former high priest, owned the markets. His family took a cut of every transaction. Jesus was not cleansing worship. He was dismantling a cartel. And one man, standing in the shadow of Solomon's colonnade, understood this better than anyone. Judas Iscariot, the only non-Galilean among the 12, the treasurer, the man who carried the money bag. And John, who was there, tells you plainly in chapter 12, verse 6. He used to help himself to what was put into it. Now watch the cleansing through his eyes. Judas does not see righteous anger. He sees strategic disaster. He has been managing the finances of what he believed was a revolutionary movement. He believed Jesus would establish a political kingdom, and he, the treasurer, would become the finance minister of the new Israel. But this man is not building a kingdom. He is attacking money itself. He is tearing down the very system Judas planned to inherit. And in this moment, coins still ringing on stone, doves still circling overhead, the whip still in the teacher's hand. Judas does not decide to betray Jesus. He decides Jesus has already betrayed him. He has followed a man for 3 years who he thought was going somewhere. And that man just set fire to the destination. The Talmud in Pesachim 57a preserves a curse the people of Jerusalem sang against the house of Annas. Woe to the house of Annas! Woe to their serpent hisses! They are high priests, their sons are treasurers, their sons-in-law are temple officers, and their servants beat the people with clubs.
10 silver pieces, my friend.
The corruption Jesus attacked was so notorious that even rabbinic literature remembers the stench. This was not a fringe grievance. This was an open secret. And Jesus took a whip to it in broad daylight. But you need to understand what happens next through the lens of a man who has just watched his investment collapse. Judas goes to the chief priests. Matthew 26 records the negotiation in a single bloodless sentence. What are you willing to give me if I deliver him to you? No emotion, no justification, a business transaction. And they count out 30 silver pieces. The Hebrew prophet Zechariah had written this number 500 years earlier. They weighed out my wages, 30 pieces of silver. And the Lord said to me, throw it to the potter, the lordly price at which I was priced by them. 30 silver pieces in the law of Moses. Exodus 21 verse 32. That was the legal compensation for a slave gored by an ox. The price of God incarnate, one dead slave. That door, the door to the high priest's chamber, swings open to let betrayal in. The same kind of door that opened Lazarus's tomb to let life out now opens to let death in. You have never sold Jesus for silver, but you have recalculated his value. You have looked at what following him costs. The career, the relationship, the comfort, and you have quietly asked the same question Judas asked. What is he worth to me? And the answer you gave was not 30 coins. It was whatever you refused to surrender. How long had Judas been stealing? How many miracles did he witness while pocketing the funds meant for the poor? How do you watch a man raise the dead and still believe you can outsmart him?
One of you.
And the deepest question, did Jesus choose Judas knowing? Or choose him because he knew? Judas betrayed Jesus because Jesus was not the kind of king Judas wanted. And that is a betrayal you commit every time you try to make God serve your plan instead of surrendering to his. The rescue operation did not pause for the traitor. It used him. The commander had already accounted for every defection. Thursday evening, the upper room. 13 men recline around a low stone table, and the air is thick with roasted lamb, bitter herbs, and hyssop. Lamplight catches the rim of clay cups filled with deep red wine. 4 cups tonight. The Passover Seder, the the same meal their ancestors ate the night death passed over Egypt. Unleavened bread sits in the center, striped from baking, pierced with holes. Nobody at this table knows they are living inside the meal that will replace every meal that came before it. Jesus stands. The conversation dies. He strips off his outer garment, the act of a servant, not a teacher. He wraps a linen towel around his waist, pours water into a clay basin, and kneels. The sound of water splashing against fired clay. He takes the first disciple's foot in his hands and begins to wash it. Calloused skin against calloused skin, dirt dissolving in the basin, and every man at that table freezes. Because they know exactly what this means. This was not humility for humility's sake. In the ancient world, foot washing was the task of the lowest Gentile slave, so degrading that a Jewish slave could not be compelled to do it. The Talmud in Kiddushin 22b is explicit. A Hebrew servant washes not the feet. That is what the law said. And here is the rabbi from Nazareth on his knees, doing what Jewish law said even a slave should not have to do. If you want to understand what this rescue operation looks like up close, it looks like God on the floor with a towel. He reaches Judas. He takes the feet of the man who has already negotiated his death. 30 silver pieces, the price of a gored slave in Exodus 21. John 13:11 is devastating in its simplicity. He knew who was going to betray him. He knew. And he washes those feet anyway, slowly, thoroughly, looking up into Judas's eyes. The hands that will be nailed tomorrow clean the feet that are walking him to the cross tonight. Then he reaches Peter. And Peter, always Peter, erupts. You shall never wash my feet. The Greek is emphatic. Au me, absolutely not, not ever. Jesus answers quietly, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. Peter swings instantly from refusal to excess. Then not just my feet. Wash my hands and my head. All or nothing. That is Peter. Always swinging between extremes, always missing the middle. And if you are honest, you recognize that voice, because it sounds exactly like yours on your best and worst days. The bread. Jesus takes the matzah, unleavened, striped from baking, pierced with holes, and breaks it. The crack echoes in the small room. This is my body, given for you. Then the cup, the third cup of the Seder, the cup of redemption. Deep red wine in a clay vessel. This is my blood of the new covenant, poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. The Greek word for new here is kainos, not neos, which means new in time, but kainos, new in kind. This is not an update to the old system. This is a replacement. The old covenant required the blood of animals year after year after year. This covenant requires one death, once, forever. What you do quickly. Jesus says it to Judas. Calm, deliberate, no anger. A commander releasing an operative into the field. Satan enters Judas. He rises from the table. He walks to the door. And John adds the most devastating editorial note in all of Scripture. 4 words that carry the weight of the cosmos. And it was night. The door opens. Judas steps through it into darkness. That same door released Lazarus from death 6 days ago. Now it releases the betrayer into the night. The door has not changed. The men walking through it have. Jesus turns to Peter. Before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Peter does not hesitate. Even if I have to die with you, I will never disown you. The text says all the other disciples said the same thing. 11 men swearing loyalty in a lamp-lit room. Within hours, every single one of them will break that oath. Gethsemane, the garden of the oil press. That is what the name means. Olives were crushed here to extract oil. Ancient stone presses still sit among the trees on the Mount of Olives. You can visit them today. You can stand where the roots of those same olive trees grip the rocky soil. Because olive trees live for thousands of years. The garden that crushed olives is about to crush something else entirely. Jesus takes Peter, James, and John deeper into the trees. His voice changes. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch. Then he walks ahead, alone, and falls face down on the earth. Abba, Father, everything is possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. The most honest prayer ever prayed. No performance, no theology, just a son asking his father if there is any other way. This was not fear of pain. This was not dread of nails. The cup was something far worse. The cup was the concentrated sin of every human being who would ever live. Every murder, every betrayal, every lie, every act of cruelty across the full span of human history, compressed into a single vessel and handed to the only innocent man who ever breathed. He was not asking to avoid death. He was asking if there was any other way to absorb the poison without drinking it. Close your eyes for a moment and picture this. A man kneeling on dirt, face pressed to the ground, sweating blood, not because he is afraid to die, but because he is about to absorb every sin you have ever committed and every sin you will ever commit. And he can feel all of it approaching like a wave. Hematidrosis. Luke 22:44. His sweat became like great drops of blood falling to the ground. Luke was a physician. He is clinically precise. Under extreme psychological stress, capillaries in the sweat glands rupture, mixing blood with perspiration. This is a documented medical phenomenon. Jesus was bleeding before anyone touched him. The drops fall onto the dark earth of the garden. The same earth where olives are crushed until the oil runs. The garden is not a setting. The garden is the press, and the man is being pressed until the blood runs. 3 times he prays. 3 times he returns to find the disciples sleeping. An angel appears and strengthens him. Luke 22:43. Not to remove the cup, to give him the strength to drink it. Have you ever begged God for another way? Have you ever prayed the same prayer 3 times and heard nothing but silence? He understands. He was there first, and he drank the cup anyway. That is the rescue operation. Not a God who removes the suffering. A God who walks into it, drinks it to the last drop, and comes out the other side holding your name. Torches. Through the olive trees. A river of fire moving uphill. Judas arrives with a detachment of soldiers. John uses the Greek word spera, a cohort that is up to 600 Roman soldiers plus temple guards, swords, clubs, armor, for one unarmed rabbi from Nazareth. They came in force for a man whose most dangerous weapon was a word, the kiss. Rabbi! Judas presses his lips to Jesus' cheek, the traditional greeting of a student to his master. Jesus responds with quiet devastation. Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Peter draws a sword. He has been waiting for this moment. He swings and cuts off the right ear of Malchus, the high priest's servant. Blood, screaming, and Jesus, in the middle of his own arrest, reaches out and touches the ear, heals it. This is the last healing miracle of his ministry, and he performs it on a man who came to arrest him. That is the rescue operation in miniature, healing the hand that holds the chain. Then, the text records it with brutal economy. All the disciples deserted him and fled. Every oath, every promise, gone. Mark adds a strange detail, a young man following in nothing but a linen cloth. The soldiers grab him. He tears free and runs naked into the darkness. Tradition says this was Mark himself, writing his own shame into the record. The rescue operation continues with one man standing and every ally running. 6 trials in 12 hours. The first, Annas, the former high priest. This was not a legal proceeding. This was a political interrogation. Annas wanted names, networks, the size of the movement.
Why do you ask me?
Jesus answers with surgical precision, I spoke openly to the world. I always taught in synagogues and in the temple. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. A guard strikes him across the face, the crack of knuckles on bone. Is that how you answer the high priest? Jesus, blood on his lip. If I said something wrong, testify as to what is wrong. But if I spoke the truth, why did you strike me? Caiaphas, the religious trial. False witnesses are brought in, and they cannot even agree with each other. Mark 14:56. Their testimony did not agree. The case is collapsing. So Caiaphas stands and plays his final card. I charge you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. And Jesus answers with the divine name, I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. The room detonates. Caiaphas tears his robe from collar to hem. The prescribed response to blasphemy. The sound of linen ripping fills the chamber. What further need do we have of witnesses? The verdict, death. They spit in his face. They blindfold him and take turns striking him. Prophesy! Who hit you? Meanwhile, in the courtyard below, Peter, a servant girl, sees him by the fire. You were with Jesus of Galilee. Peter's voice cracks. I do not know what you are talking about. A second time. This man was with him? Peter, I do not know the man. A third time. Peter begins to curse and swear. I do not know the man. And the rooster crows. The sound splits the pre-dawn silence of Jerusalem, echoing off limestone walls. Luke 22:61, the most devastating verse in the Gospels. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. Not a word, just a look. Through a courtyard, across a fire, through the chaos of guards and priests and torchlight, Jesus turns and finds Peter's eyes. What was in that look? Not anger, not disappointment, recognition. He told you this would happen, and now it has. And he is looking at you not with judgment, but with the sorrow of someone who loved you before you failed and will love you after. Peter goes out and weeps bitterly. Dawn breaks gray over Jerusalem. The Sanhedrin convenes formally to ratify the death sentence because a night trial was illegal under their own law. They needed daylight to make it legitimate. Even the murder of God required paperwork. The machinery of religion grinding forward, stamping the forms, checking the boxes, killing the innocent with proper procedure. Pilate, the Roman prefect. Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus, you say so. Pilate's wife sends an urgent message. Have nothing to do with that righteous man. I suffered greatly in a dream because of him. Pilate finds no guilt, so he sends Jesus to Herod Antipas. The fox, the man who beheaded John the Baptist. Herod was delighted. He wanted a miracle, entertainment. And Jesus gave him the most terrifying response possible, absolute silence. Herod was the only person in the Gospels Jesus refused to speak to. Not Pilate, not Caiaphas, not the soldiers who beat him. Herod. Some people are not worth a word. Herod sends Jesus back in a mock royal robe. Pilate offers the crowd a choice, Jesus or Barabbas. And here is the detail that should stop you cold. The name Bar-Abbas means son of the Father. The crowd chooses the false son of the Father over the true son of the Father. They release a murderer and condemn the healer. Pilate washes his hands in a bronze basin, water running over his fingers as if guilt could be dissolved. Then he presents Jesus to the crowd, battered, bleeding, draped in mockery, and delivers the most famous two words in Latin, ecce homo, behold the man. 6 courts, 6 verdicts, not one found him guilty of a crime. He was not condemned because he broke a law. He was condemned because he claimed to be God. And the evidence that he was telling the truth was so overwhelming that the only way to stop it was to kill him. This was not justice failing. This was the rescue operation entering its most critical phase. Every illegal trial, every coerced witness, every political calculation. He anticipated all of it, and he stood silent, because speaking would have stopped the plan that would save you. Pilate asked the most important question in human history, "What is truth?" and walked out of the room before the answer could speak. How many of you have done the same thing? Asked God a question and then filled the silence with your own noise before he could respond? Hold this image in your mind. Inside the temple, beyond the courts, past the altar of incense. A curtain, 60 feet tall, woven so thick that teams of oxen could not tear it. It separates the Holy of Holies from the world. It has hung there for centuries. Remember it, because it will not survive the afternoon. The Roman flagrum is not a whip. It is an instrument of engineering. 3 leather thongs, each tipped with lead balls called plumbatae, and sharpened fragments of sheep bone. The prisoner is stripped naked, wrists bound to a post at chest height, back exposed. The first lash lands across the shoulders. The lead balls raise deep contusions that split open on the second strike. The bone tips catch the edges of torn skin and rake it away in ribbons. By the 10th blow, subcutaneous tissue is exposed. By the 20th, muscle fibers are visible. 39 lashes. Jewish law capped punishment at 40, so they stopped one short of mercy's maximum. By the end, Isaiah's prophecy is literal. His appearance was so marred beyond human semblance. The back is no longer recognizable as a human back. Now, the mockery. The soldiers weave a crown, but not the delicate circlet you have seen in paintings. The Greek text suggests a cap woven from the branches of the Ziziphus spina Christi plant. The thorns are 2 inches long. They press it down over the entire scalp. Blood runs into his eyes, his ears, down his neck. They drape a purple robe over the shredded back, likely a faded military cloak, the color of mockery. They shove a reed into his hand as a scepter, and then they kneel. "Hail, King of the Jews!" They spit in his face. They take the reed from his hand and strike him on the head, driving the thorns deeper into the scalp with every blow. This is Rome's comedy. This is what the empire does with kings it does not recognize. The Via Dolorosa. Jesus carries the patibulum, the horizontal crossbeam, roughly 75 pounds of rough-hewn timber laid across shoulders that have been flayed to the bone. He walks through the narrow streets of Jerusalem. The crowd presses in. He falls. The wood slams into the stone pavement. His face hits the ground. The soldiers do not help him up. They look at the crowd and grab the nearest strong man they can find. His name is Simon. He is from Cyrene, modern-day Libya, North Africa. He has traveled hundreds of miles for Passover. Mark's gospel names his sons Alexander and Rufus. That detail matters. Mark does not name people casually. He names them because the early church knew this family. Simon did not volunteer. He was conscripted, a random African pilgrim forced to carry the instrument of execution for a man he had never met. And here is what you need to understand. If you had been in that crowd, it could have been you. The soldier's hand on your shoulder, the wood on your back, someone else's blood soaking through your cloak. Imagine you are Simon. The wood bites into your shoulder. It is sticky with blood that is not yours. The man walking ahead of you can barely stand. His back is a ruin. He stumbles. You catch the weight, and with every step up the hill, you feel the full mass of what is about to happen pressing down on your spine. You did not choose this. You were chosen for it. Women line the road. They are weeping, tearing their garments, beating their chests. Jesus stops. He turns to them. This man who can barely stand, whose blood is pooling in his sandal prints. And he speaks, not about himself, about them. Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children. For if they do these things when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry? He is warning them. About 70 Anno Domini, about the Roman siege that will starve this city to cannibalism and burn the temple to bare rock. Even now, even bleeding, he is still trying to save people. Golgotha, the place of the skull. 9 in the morning, they lay the crossbeam on the ground and stretch his arms across it. The nails are not decorative. In 1968, archaeologists excavating the Givat HaMivtar ossuary in Jerusalem found a crucifixion nail still embedded in a human heel bone. The only direct physical evidence of Roman crucifixion ever recovered. You can see it today in the Israel Museum. The nails went through the wrists, between the radius and ulna. Not the palms. The palms cannot support body weight. The feet were nailed through the heel bones to the vertical beam. The sound is iron on bone. And then the cross is lifted and dropped into its socket in the rock. The jolt tears through every wound. Above his head, a sign in 3 languages: Hebrew, Latin, Greek. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. The chief priests are furious. They go to Pilate. Do not write King of the Jews. Write that he claimed to be King of the Jews.
It is finished.
Pilate, the man who washed his hands of this, suddenly finds his spine. 5 words. What I have written, I have written. The only thing Pilate got right that day. And he did not even know why. The 7 last words, each one a window into what is actually happening on that cross. First, and listen to this carefully, the first thing he says is king on his throne of wood, Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are doing. He opens his reign with amnesty, not judgment, not vengeance, amnesty. Second, to the criminal dying beside him, a man with no credentials, no baptism, no church membership, nothing but a last breath confession. Today you will be with me in paradise. Third, he looks down at his mother and at John. Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother. Even dying, he provides for her. Even suffocating, he is still parenting. Then, the 4th word, the one that shakes the foundations. Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. My God, why have you forsaken me? Every person in that crowd thought he was crying out in despair. Some thought he was calling for Elijah, but he was not abandoned. He was quoting Psalm 22, verse 1, written by David 1,000 years before crucifixion was invented. And if any of them had bothered to read the next verses, they would have found their own actions described a millennium before they committed them. They pierced my hands and my feet. They divide my garments among them and cast lots for my clothing. Look at the foot of the cross. The soldiers are doing it right now, casting dice for his robe. He is not screaming in despair. He is annotating his own death with Scripture. He is pointing at the prophecy and saying, read the rest. Read how it ends. Darkness, from noon to 3 in the afternoon. Not an eclipse. Passover falls on a full moon, and solar eclipses are impossible during a full moon. This is something else. 3 hours of supernatural blackness over the land. The Roman historian Phlegon of Tralles, writing in the 2nd century, recorded an extraordinary eclipse and earthquake in the 4th year of the 202nd Olympiad, which corresponds precisely to the year of the Crucifixion. A pagan historian documented the darkness. He had no idea what caused it, but he wrote it down, because it was too strange to ignore. 5th word, I thirst. The creator of water, the one who spoke oceans into existence, thirsty. They lift a sponge soaked in sour wine on a hyssop branch. Hyssop, the same plant used to paint lamb's blood on doorposts at the first Passover. The details are not accidental. Nothing here is accidental. 6th word, and this is where you need to lean in. Tetelestai, translated, it is finished, but the Greek tells you what English cannot. Tetelestai was not a cry of defeat. It was an accounting term. Merchants stamped it on invoices. Tax collectors wrote it on receipts. It meant one thing, paid in full. Every sin, past, present, future, every debt you carry, every shame you hide, stamped, complete, done. 7th word, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. And he bows his head and he dies. But notice that he chose the moment. John's gospel is explicit. He gave up his spirit. The Greek is paradidomi. He handed it over voluntarily. No one took his life. He laid it down. The rescue operation required him to walk through death, and he walked through it on his own terms. The moment he dies, the earth convulses, rocks split, tombs crack open, and inside the temple, the veil tears, not from bottom to top as human hands would tear it, from the top, 60 feet tall, 30 feet wide, 4 inches thick. The Talmud records that this curtain was woven so densely that 2 teams of oxen pulling in opposite directions could not rip it apart. God reached down and tore the barrier between himself and humanity in half. The Holy of Holies. The place where only one priest could enter once a year stands open, exposed, accessible. The door that had been sealed since Sinai is blown off its hinges. At the foot of the cross, a Roman centurion stares upward. This man has watched hundreds of executions. He has seen criminals beg, curse, lose control of their bodies, scream for their mothers. He has never seen this. A man who forgave his killers, who comforted his mother, who chose the moment of his own death, who died and the sky went black and the earth shook. The centurion, a pagan soldier, a man with no scripture, no covenant, no theology, opens his mouth and becomes the first evangelist. Truly, this was the Son of God. The same Jerusalem that gleamed in gold when Jesus wept over it from the Mount of Olives. Same city, same temple, but now the sky is black. The veil hangs torn. The gold that caught the sunlight is swallowed in darkness. The city he wept over has killed him, and it does not yet know what it has done. Stop, just stop for a moment. A man who could have called 12 legions of angels to his defense. 72,000 warriors of heaven, hung on wood and suffocated for 6 hours. Not because he had to, because you were the alternative. If he does not hang there, you stay separated from God forever. That is not theology. That is not a sermon illustration. That is the cost of your rescue, and he paid it. In full. Tetelestai. The receipt is stamped. Your name is on it. Friday evening. The sky is still gray. A man named Joseph, from Arimathea, a member of the very Sanhedrin that condemned Jesus, goes to Pilate and asks for the body. Luke's gospel is precise. Joseph had not consented to their decision and action. He had been a secret disciple. He is not secret anymore. Nicodemus comes with him. The same Nicodemus who came to Jesus by night in John chapter 3, afraid to be seen. He carries 75 pounds of myrrh and aloes. 2 members of the council that voted for death now prepare the body for burial. They wrap him in clean linen. They lay him in Joseph's own new tomb, cut from rock. And the stone rolls across the entrance, sealed. A Roman guard posted, a Roman seal pressed into the stone. Breaking it was a capital offense. Every precaution the empire could take against a dead man, they were afraid of a corpse. Saturday, the longest Sabbath in history. The disciples are scattered behind locked doors. Peter has not stopped weeping. The sound of a rooster still ringing in his skull. Judas is dead. He threw the 30 silver pieces back at the priests. I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. They shrugged. What is that to us? That is your responsibility. He hanged himself. The priests picked up the coins and debated. They could not put blood money back in the temple treasury, so they bought a potter's field, a graveyard for strangers, fulfilling Zechariah, written 500 years earlier. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field. The money that purchased God's betrayal now purchases a place to bury the nameless dead. But while the disciples weep and the city sleeps and the guards stand watch over a sealed tomb, something is happening where no human eye can see. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 19, he went and proclaimed to the spirits in prison, the anastasis, the harrowing of hell, the earliest Christian art, centuries before medieval painters, shows this, not the crucifixion, as the central image of salvation. Christ descends into Sheol, the realm of the dead. The gates shatter. He takes Adam by the hand and pulls him from the grave. This was not a visit. This was a prison break. The rescue operation did not end at the cross. It continued through death itself. He went where no living person could follow and brought out prisoners who had been waiting since the beginning of the world. Sunday, before dawn, the air is cold. Mary Magdalene walks to the tomb in the dark. She carries spices. She carries grief. She finds the stone rolled away. She does not go in. She runs. She finds Peter and John. They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him. Peter and John race to the tomb. John arrives first, stops at the entrance, looks in. Peter barrels past him, goes inside. The linen wrappings are lying flat, not unwound, not torn off, flat, as if the body simply passed through them, and the burial cloth that had been around Jesus' head is folded, set apart, separate from the rest. In Jewish custom, a folded napkin at a table meant one thing: I am not finished. I am coming back. Peter and John leave. Mary stays. She stands outside the tomb, weeping. She looks inside and sees 2 figures in white sitting where the body had been. One at the head, one at the feet. Woman, why are you weeping? She turns. A man stands behind her. She assumes he is the gardener. Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him. One word, just one word. Her name, Mary. She knows that voice. She has heard it cast out 7 demons from her body. She has heard it teach on hillsides and whisper prayers at dawn. She would know it in a crowd of 10,000. Rabboni, teacher. The rescue operation is complete. The man who signed his own death warrant by raising Lazarus has now signed death's death warrant by raising himself. And notice, the angel rolled the stone away, but not to let Jesus out. He was already gone. The stone was moved so that you could look inside and see that death could not hold him. The empty tomb is not evidence of absence, it is evidence of escape. And notice who God chose as the first witness. Not Peter, not John, not a priest or a Roman official. Mary Magdalene, a woman whose testimony was inadmissible in a Jewish court of law. If this were a fabricated story, no first-century author would have invented this detail. It is too embarrassing, too counterproductive, unless it actually happened. God chose the legally worthless witness, because this kingdom is always worked upside down. That same afternoon, 2 disciples walk the road to Emmaus, 7 miles from Jerusalem, walking away from everything. Defeated, a stranger joins them. He opens the scriptures, Moses, the prophets, the Psalms, and shows them how everything, every thread, every prophecy, every sacrificial lamb and torn curtain and bronze serpent pointed to this. Their hearts burn within them. At the table that evening, he takes bread. He breaks it, and they recognize him. In the breaking, and he vanishes. The door of the tomb opened, the door of their understanding opened, and every locked door in your life has a resurrection on the other side of it. 8 days later, Thomas, the one who said, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands and put my finger where the nails were, I will not believe." Jesus appears in the locked room. He does not rebuke Thomas. He extends his hands. "Put your finger here. See my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." Thomas falls to his knees. 2 words. The highest declaration of Christ's identity in all 4 Gospels, spoken by the biggest doubter in the room. "My Lord and my God." And then Jesus says something that reaches through 2,000 years of history and lands directly in your chest. "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." He is talking about you. The tomb is empty. The door is open. The stone was not rolled away to let him out. It was rolled away to let the witnesses in. And you are a witness now. You have seen the same evidence Thomas saw, written in the same words, preserved across 2 millennia. The rescue operation is not a historical event that ended in a garden outside Jerusalem. It is an open extraction, and your name is on the manifest. Now I need to talk to you directly. Not about Jesus, not about Pilate or Peter or Mary, about you. Because this rescue operation was not a historical event that ended 2,000 years ago. It is an open extraction, and your name is on the manifest. He was whipped so your shame could be healed. He was silent before his accusers so you could have a voice before the throne. He was forsaken for 3 hours so you would never be forsaken for a single second. He was buried in borrowed linen so you could be clothed in righteousness you did not earn. He descended into death so death could never hold you. Close your eyes and picture this. A modern hospital corridor, sterile white tiles, fluorescent lights humming overhead. You are walking toward the far end, and the tiles beneath your feet begin to change. Smooth linoleum becomes rough-hewn limestone. The fluorescent tubes give way to morning light pouring through a low stone opening. You are standing at the mouth of an empty tomb. The grave clothes are folded. Nobody is inside. The world looked at the cross and saw defeat. The religious leaders saw a problem eliminated. Rome saw order restored. The disciples saw the end, but God saw the beginning. The rescue was not interrupted by death. Death was the rescue. The grave was not the end of the operation. The grave was the staging ground for the largest prison break in cosmic history. Remember the man who raised Lazarus, knowing it would trigger his own death? He did it anyway, because he looked across time and saw you, locked in a tomb of your own making, wrapped in grave clothes of guilt and shame and separation. And he said your name the same way he said Lazarus's name, the same way he said Mary's name in the garden, and the door opened. In the next video, we trace what happened in the 40 days after the resurrection. The appearances, the Great Commission, the Ascension, and the single sentence Jesus spoke that launched a movement that conquered the empire that killed him. Subscribe now, because you do not want to miss what comes next. Tell me in the comments, which moment stopped you? Was it the blood in Gethsemane? Was it the look Jesus gave Peter? Was it the folded cloth? Was it your own name in Mary's place? Drop it below. 100 billion souls across the full span of human history. That was the extraction list. And the operator who carried it out did not send an angel, did not send a prophet, did not send a book. He came himself. He bled himself. He died himself. And on the third day, he walked out of his own grave and left the door open behind him. Tetelestai, paid in full, it is finished.